So welcome everyone. I'm here with Juli Min, editor of Shanghai Literary Review. It's very early here on my end, but I know it's evening where you are. So thanks so much, Julie, for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. Yeah, it's a pleasure to be here.
Great. And any questions from the audience at any time, just go ahead and type your questions into the chat and I will work them into the conversation with Julie. So let's jump right in. Julie, tell us about when the magazine started, why it started, and what your role is at the magazine.
Sure. I personally moved to Shanghai in 2015, and I moved from New York, where I was I guess like quite active in a little bit of the literary scene, just in terms of going to readings, going to workshops. Um I had been working on a book at that time, so I was kind of very interested in everything that the city had to offer. And then when I came to Shanghai, I um I felt like I didn't have that community anymore.
Mhm.
So, kind of selfishly, I wanted to create more of that community
Mhm.
um where I was living. And I also felt like there was a space for this kind of magazine. Shanghai being such an international city, a city with such an interesting history, um, and relationship with, the West, and I didn't see a kind of I didn't see this kind of avenue for kind of communication between these
Mhm.
international literary communities, um, like international literary centers. And when I came to Shanghai, I ended up meeting through various kind of like local events, a few writers who quickly became friends. And I also had a couple of friends from New York, um, one of whom was moving to Asia himself. And so we were all writers, writers and kind of artists and creatives. And so we decided that we would create the Shanghai Literary Review to kind of fill this spot.
Mhm.
Um, and because we were all American or European, some of us of Asian descent, but grew up kind of in the West mostly, or partly, or half of our lives in the West. Um, we 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 wanted to make sure that we wanted to make sure that we were positioning ourselves as an international English language magazine. And we had like the Paris Review in our in our minds, that history of kind of a group of writers living abroad, kind of hoping to create something special that has kind of influences from this new home that we live in, but that also engages with a larger international, a larger literary conversation. So, that was the kind of the origin, and it was four of us in the beginning. We started it at the end of 2016, and yeah, over the course of I guess all those years now, we've grown to have kind of a larger staff, and we also have, in the past few years, started to receive institutional support from Duke University. Has a satellite university now in Kunshan, which is just outside of Shanghai. So we are kind of affiliated with them now, and that's wonderful.
But so have you found that you've generated that kind of community that you were trying to create? First of all, I just want to say it sounds incredibly brave to go into, I don't know if you lived there over the course of your life at some other point, but just to move to a new
No, yeah.
country, and just decide I want to set roots down a little bit and kind of create a literary community from scratch. I think that's amazing. That's great. And I'm curious if you found that that it's been successful, if you were able, and how have you gone about, like, are there readings? Are there, what kind of literary
Yeah.
community have you found?
Yeah, so the four of us, I don't want to, I want to make sure that I'm kind of honoring and respecting the literary communities that existed
Mhm.
and have existed in their richness and success before we entered the scene. But
Sure.
the four of us, the four of us founding editors, we all came to Shanghai for various reasons, for work, for um, kind of exploring identity and roots. So um, everyone kind of came to Shanghai for various reasons, and the Shanghai Literary Review was something that we decided to do kind of once we arrived. So it wasn't like the reason that we kind of came to Shanghai, I would say, but we were all living here and we came together and found each other and decided it was a worthwhile experiment.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, when we started, there were a lot more events, readings, lectures, um, open mics, performances, um, and like I said, just a more populous expat community or a foreign community or people working in the or people just interested in working in the English language or in translation. And so in those early years, like I would say the first 3, 4 years, we were incredibly active.
Mhm.
We hosted open mics, we had readings, we presented writers, we did like kind of more alternative like music slash poetry collaborations with local musicians. Um, we were really having a good time. Like, we were having, we were really like creating this um, literary art, um, party scene, we were really enjoying it. And I think, I mean, we had to stop during the pandemic. I mean, everything stopped in China during the pandemic, kind of at the very beginning and then at the very end of that kind of like 2 year span. But it slowed us down. And especially towards the end when all of Shanghai shut down
Mhm.
and the businesses were shut down and we couldn't even kind of print. Um, so that really made us pause. So for us as a magazine, we've almost totally stopped um, activities in China, and we focused. We've had to kind of pivot and refocus on kind of the outside world. So we
Mhm.
sell now mostly to an international English speaking uh, audience, and we've decided to kind of try to focus less on kind of the social life and cultural life here
Mhm.
and more on kind of trying to get better. We're like horrible, but trying to get better at things like internet, social media,
Mhm.
things like that. So we've really kind of just just it's hard to do a literary magazine. Um, the pandemic made us really have to kind of reposition ourselves as more of an international
Mhm.
magazine that happens to have been founded in Shanghai and kind of thematically has um, a relationship to this country. But
Sure.
that's almost it. Yeah.
So how much of the work um, that you publish in the magazine? Well, first, I guess I should ask what kind of tie to Shanghai or China at large does the work need to have? And then relatedly, do you want to see work that reflects this changing cultural life, civic
Dynamic.
life, or are you trying to avoid it for various
Mm.
reasons?
Yeah. Okay. So a few questions there. What relationship does the work need to have to Shanghai or China or Asia? We explicitly say on our website that the work does not have to have a relationship to the region or kind of the ideas surrounding Asia or diaspora or identity even. Um, we we always, by the nature of our name, by the nature of where we live, our contacts, who we are, um, we always do get submissions that are um, sometimes about um, life in Asia or the Asian diaspora or identity. Um, and so that's wonderful. And we do focus our critical sections. So I mean, book reviews and interviews. We make a point of um, those sections being focused on works that are written about Asia or kind of or writers who might be from the Asian diaspora. So we do make sure that we are always kind of engaging with Asia and Asian literature, kind of broadly defined in the magazine in some way. But in terms of the other sections, the creative sections, fiction, poetry, our literary nonfiction, visual art, it will always be a mix. And we don't have like a quota because we don't feel we need to have a quota. We've always had a very healthy diversity of kind of writer and artist backgrounds. And in some issues it like weighs more kind of Western heavy. In some issues it it's a little bit the reverse. But um yeah, we find it's been okay. And because we are editors who've always kind of lived between countries and between cultures, we are very interested in that dialogue between voices and inner voices and out, and kind of individual voices. So we've always kind of embraced that interplay within each issue of that kind of multiplicity of backgrounds
Mhm.
and
So if it
experiences.
isn't work that is expressly related to China or Shanghai in some way, what kind of work are you seeking?
Yeah. So we are very literary. So in terms of fiction, poetry, we are really looking at writers who pay very close attention to craft. And we have never published genre fiction. So yeah, so purely genre fiction is not something that we've ever published. And but beyond that, we've never kind of dictated a kind of like style parameter or kind of yeah. So in terms of, so I also edit the fiction section, and in terms of fiction, I mean, we've had very, very kind of experimental, almost avant-garde fiction that really plays with form and language. And we've had, your kind of like straight up literary realist, contemporary short stories.
Mhm.
Um, and I personally, and I'm just talking about fiction here, I love all of it. I love all of it if I think that it's doing something kind of special and it's doing it really well. Um, I would say the same thing of poetry and yeah, all of our sections, we're just looking for singular voices, singular styles, just high quality work, attention to language,
Mhm.
uh, and I mean, I have the issue. I don't know if you can see it, but I
I
have the
just
issue
got
in front of
mine
me.
this morning.
Oh,
Thank
fantastic,
you. Yes.
fantastic. You got the whole pack, right?
I did, yes.
Okay, okay.
They're
Yeah,
beautiful.
so yeah, so we have, I mean, you can see like from the names from our contributors, we have, it's really a mix. It's really kind of across the board, like very, very like kind of household
Mm,
names in some genres. Like in issue 7, we published Robert Hess and
mm,
like Reginald Gibbons, um, and like Maggie Smith. And then we've also published writers for whom this is our first publication.
mhm,
So we also like that interplay of, I mean, it's not necessarily an interplay because we think everything is really, really good. So
mhm.
but we don't like focus on
Mm,
having, kind of name brand superstar writers across the board. We feel like there's incredible quality work coming in even into our submittable
mhm.
channel, and we feel very, very happy to publish both kind of emerging and established writers
Yeah.
um, side by side. So so yeah, we're very literary. We have all, like I said, most of our editors are writers. Many of us have like MFAs in fiction or nonfiction or poetry, and so we are ourselves writers who like hold ourselves to you know standards of just like trying to rigorously do interesting things with craft,
Mhm,
and so that's also what we're looking for.
mhm. It's really interesting. I mean, I think the mission of the magazine is so important and quite
Mm,
beautiful as our world leaders are sort of heating up between, China and the US. Things are getting a little tense perhaps, but I love this idea that there's this magazine which really kind of doesn't deal with that. This is about the people, this is about poetry, this is about individual stories, this isn't about kind of superpowers and whatever is going to happen on the global geopolitical stage. This is really about people telling their stories.
yeah, and their stories, fictional stories, like
Mhm.
crazy speculative literary stories. I mean,
Mhm.
we've gotten so many things, we've published so many types of things, and um yeah, it's we never set out to be a political magazine or to
Mhm.
be a magazine that comments on um I mean, you could argue that there's always this comment, but um we never, we never had this agenda of
Mhm.
explicitly stating any kind of um yeah, politics.
Yeah.
So we've always been about finding good literature wherever it comes to us from, and celebrating craft. Yeah.
Mhm. And so what are you looking for in submissions? What are common reasons that a piece will be rejected?
Oof. That's an interesting like angle. Why is it rejected? Um, I mean, simply it's not the right place, like we're not the right place for this piece. We get
Mm,
a lot of submissions, and um it's sometimes, it's like I just like totally kind of didn't even read our I mean, I don't assume that everyone buys a copy and reads the magazine before they submit, but we have a lot of pieces online, and even kind of our submittable, we try to be a little bit clear. But yeah, it's sometimes we get just things that are so totally out of left field, like kind of like romance or um uh so that's one kind of easy reason.
Mhm.
But I mean, we get a lot of good things, and sometimes it's just a matter of space, you know?
Mm.
Uh, sometimes we don't think it's, it's developed enough, or we expect too many changes from a piece. But um, one of our kind of philosophies is that we only like to accept a piece when we can envision it in our magazine without major changes. So
Mm.
we would never accept a piece where we would kind of require the writer to undergo like heavy edits or kind of substantial changes. Sometimes we do embark on heavy edits and substantial changes. Um, and sometimes the writer will push back and we'll be like, okay, sometimes we'll go back and forth, and sometimes we will accept the resistance, and we are always fine with that. We kind of sit well with that because we've already gone into the acceptance process, knowing that we only accept things we really love and can stand by as they are already. So that's kind of a high bar. Sometimes you read a piece and you think it's really great, but if only it was in like the third person, or if only it was, you know, if only like these sections were like were shifted dramatically. And sometimes if we think of pieces so great and with such killer potential, we will kind of have that conversation with the writer beforehand, before acceptance. Um, but we will never assume that the revision process will like go exactly our way.
Mhm. Can you take us a bit through the editorial process? First of all, how many submissions do you get? Do you have that figure? And then what happens? Do you have volunteer readers, or is it just you and other editors reading all the submissions?
Yeah, like I know I just checked my submittable today, and I don't have the breakdown by section. It's always kind of fiction heavy, and I'm very, very behind on cleaning up my submissions, but I had like close to 1,000
Mm.
pieces waiting to be read.
2000, did
And
you say?
1,000,
Wow.
almost 1,000.
So,
And that's across the magazine, but it's a lot that we haven't cleared. Um, so okay. We we ask our editors to read everything. So that doesn't mean that we don't have like a team of volunteer readers. We may have an editorial assistant for a section. Um, but generally our editors kind of work independently. I give them like total control over their section. They're people I trust, whose taste I trust and respect. So, and judgment. And so basically each section editor will go through their submissions, and sometimes we'll also um, request pieces from writers. Um, but generally, yeah, in terms of submissions, every editor will read everything. And if there's a small team with an editorial assistant or multiple editors within a section, like for example, I work with another editor in fiction, then we will all read everything, we will all vote, and we will have multiple discussions to narrow things down and talk about what we like. And yeah, so once the various editors read and make decisions and make a short list, then they will send their kind of short list or final decisions to me. I will look at everything. Um, I've never I retain the right to kind of veto, but I've never had to use that
Mhm.
because like I said, these are people I trust. Um, and once we have that list, we just kind of move forward.
Mhm.
So some, poetry, visual art, um, usually doesn't have many edits, but some sections do. So like I will work on edits, and I will, it will vary. Like some pieces I think will be pretty much there. So mostly kind of line edit type edits. And some I will try to push for more like structural or kind of um, like thematic or whatever edits.
Mhm.
So that process will sometimes go through a few rounds. So 4 rounds of edits. Um, and every editor is different. Like our nonfiction editor, who was also like a founding editor, Kenny, he's like notoriously like very hard on his writers. Like he just slices and dices, and he has comments like, you know, just like filling up the the right hand side. And so yeah, and he does like many rounds, like 6 7 rounds sometimes. And um and yeah, of course, like he loves the pieces that he's working on, so in the name of um just excitement and kind of, yeah, just making it more fully itself.
Right.
But yeah, every editor is different um in terms of their editorial style. But like I said, I don't really manage the editors. We're kind of like individuals working to kind of pull something together.
Sure. And so the magazine publishes print and online. Is all the same work in the print edition and online edition? And also, how do you sustain the funding for the print magazine, especially if you have to ship internationally?
Yeah, so we print once a year, and we with like a very kind of big delay, we post things online. So we will post um I think we've posted everything through issue 3 or 4 online, and we're going into issue 8 now. So yeah, there's a delay, but once it's up there, it's free.
Hmm.
And um we do sometimes publish book reviews and interviews in real time online only,
Hmm.
because we have such a long runway to our print issue. Sometimes a book comes out, and we have someone interested in doing a review on it or interviewing an author who's kind of doing some kind of promotion. So we time that to their advantage, or just to be timely with the conversation. And then um yeah, funding, basically, like in the beginning we funded ourselves
Hmm.
um for a few issues, and then after our we funded ourselves, but we also kind of were able to make the money back. um
That's great.
so yeah, I mean, like, just barely. It's not like we were rolling in it. But we were okay. And as we wanted to do more and wanted to kind of pay for more things like submittable, more shipping,
Hmm.
we decided to kind of look for funding. So we reached out to Duke, Kunshan University, and they were excited to kind of partner with us and offer us some financial assistance. So they give us a limited amount, and it pays for things like printing and shipping internationally and a few other kind of big ticket expenses. But we still kind of um, pay for some things on our own,
Hmm.
and they're definitely a lot more expenses. Um, and we do actually pay some of our some of our kind of like at-large stuff.
Mm.
So, like our copy editor, our designer. Um, so and we hope to eventually pay our contributors. That's something we've wanted to do for a long time now. Um, we don't actually pay our editors. So our editors are all kind of doing it because they like to do it,
Mhm.
which sometimes blows my mind. Um, but yeah, I'm so grateful for
Yeah.
this generous team and passionate team. But I also, as the editor, I don't ask editors to do anything beyond edit their section.
Mhm.
So, that's basically just reading submissions, following up with writers, selecting, um, talking to me about, some things when it comes to kind of laying out. And so I think, those are kind of the joyful aspects of running a lit mag. And I think that, they're joyful, they're exciting, they're invigorating for an artist. And it's also, it involves communication with other artists at various kind of levels in their career. So that's kind of like I said, that's the pleasurable side of being involved in a lit mag. And I try to kind of shield them from other responsibilities and other tasks, which means a lot of it falls on me and now my co-editor, Brian, um, and sometimes kind of the grunt work to our editorial assistants. But I think that's probably a big reason why so many editors have stayed with us for so many years, despite not it being a money-making
Mhm.
exercise. It's because I think that, they get something out of it.
Sure.
Um,
Do you have a wish list of work that you would like to see more of?
um, I mean, I think we really get such good stuff. I mean, and such diverse submissions in terms of like style and voice and topic, subject. I I mean, what can I say? Like,
Just
what can
keep
I
more of the same, just keep sending more of the same, is that
yeah, I mean, okay, like I like established writers, they're wonderful because they on some level they increase our visibility, or prestige. But like I said, we're not like we're not so ravenous to
Mm.
be this kind of um magazine chock full of big names. We really love supporting emerging writers, and we love finding those gems in our submissions piles. So um I don't know. And because we're not we don't limit ourselves to kind of a theme, like a style or like a polemics. We I wouldn't want to say that we want writing from a certain type of identity or a certain type of um kind of
some aesthetic?
trendy.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's um because we don't want to limit ourselves
Mm.
or necessary. Yeah, so I mean, in terms of our creative work, um we're quite open-minded and um but also we're not like trend focused.
Mhm.
I don't know if that makes
It's
sense or if I'm being fair, but
No,
we're
that makes total sense. Yeah, I'm curious where it's impressive that you have so many submissions coming in. It's wonderful. And I'm curious, the extent of your outreach, like how do you promote the magazine? How are you getting those submissions? are you very active on social media, or how are you reaching writers?
Yeah, so I mean, I think many of those submissions, you know, they haven't like been dealt with properly. So, you know, we have a lot of writers who sometimes email and say, "What's my status?" And unfortunately, we have so many submissions that we can't update individuals sometimes on their status, and it's overwhelming because, you know, especially when I tell you that we have one or two editors per section and we attempt to read everything. So it's actually a lot of logistical work to kind of reach out to everyone, to kind of even to kind of clean up and reply. Um it's a challenge. So um sorry, I was too busy defending myself and I missed your question.
Well, it's good. I think it's good for writers to have insight into why sometimes it takes so long for to hear back from editors. It's not that they're like ignoring you; it's just they're totally overwhelmed. But the question was how you like what kind of outreach? Is it all word of mouth at this point, or
Oh,
like
yes.
outreach? Like how are you getting so many submissions?
Yeah, you know, that's actually a mystery to me because we are like like I said, we are so bad at social media. That's something I'm personally really bad at. Like I have a Twitter and I think I've posted like maybe 20 times in the past like few years. It's just not something that any of our team are good at. Like I said, we're all like artists who prefer to work on kind of the editorial and creative side of putting together a magazine, and we are very bad at the kind of business side of it, to be honest.
Mhm.
And so yeah, I think there's I think there's an element of word of mouth. Um, our first issue, we put out a lot of calls for submissions. Like we did the creative writing opportunities mailing list. We did, which is I think like a Yahoo group,
Mhm.
and we also did like a big Facebook blast. And we got incredible submissions, like really blew my mind. I was hoping for great work and I was just floored, like impressed with this magic. Um, so from the get-go, okay, I mean I don't want to sell ourselves short. Like we, you know, like I was living and writing in New York, and so was another friend, and another friend has an MFA. You know, many of us have all of us found all of our founders at this point have MFAs. So we definitely had communities of writers that we tapped into
Mm.
for those first initial issues. Um, and then yeah, like I said, we're not great at social media or interneting. So, but I think there is a word of mouth kind of
Mhm.
uh effect. I I was I was surprised and so happy to hear um from like my UK editor um for like for my personal project that she had heard about me and TSLR
Mm.
um, when she had gone to a literary festival in Korea.
Wow.
Um, and that was even before, you know, I had like submitted my book to her.
Great.
So 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 it so it's incredible to know that we are part of a conversation, and I remember my poetry editor was telling me that when he had asked like Reginald Gibbons for a contribution. Um, he was like well aware of our magazine and kind of where we stood in the literary community, and just kind of hearing okay the occasional thing like that just amazes me. And and also I think it's a testament to the quality of the work
Yeah.
that we struggle to put ourselves out there, and yet the caliber of our writers is so good that they kind of stand for themselves, and they find their readers. And yeah, and then we've always had a kind of academic bent. One of our editors came on. Several of our editors work in academia. They're like PhD students, or like professors, or lecturers in various universities, and so we've also always had like contributors, sometimes from academia, um, engaging with ideas, or writing on an academic level. And I think that also adds to, I guess, just the intellectual rigor of our magazine as well.
Sure.
So I think there's some creative rigor as well as intellectual rigor that we try to uphold.
Mhm.
Yeah.
That's great. So two more questions before we wrap up. Are you at all looking for volunteer readers? It sounds like you guys might benefit from a little help. I don't know, just sort of screening submissions. Is that something, if somebody's hearing all this and they think like that sounds great, should they reach out to you? Is that something you're looking for, or not right now?
So volunteer readers, we are of course happy to have volunteer readers, but because because we because we I don't know,
You
no
can
other
just
way to
say
say it, because
no.
we hold ourselves to such a high standard.
Yeah,
Because we hold ourselves to such a high standard, we need to also make sure that our readers hold themselves to the same
right.
standard and have almost the same, like knowledge and um, experience
Yeah.
with literary craft. And so we have had readers uh, work or volunteer for our magazine, but they've all been readers we know and
Yeah.
trust.
Mhm.
Um, and we even have done like tests to kind of, like send a few submissions and get some feedback on them, and then just kind of see what language a reader will use to
Mhm.
discuss a work. So
Mhm.
not just like, I like it, or not just like, oh, the plot was interesting, but engaging with it on a, on just like a writerly level.
Mhm.
And so yeah, I would say we welcome readers, but we might give you a test.
It sounds like there's a real synergy already established among the editors, and that's hard to replicate with people from the outside that you don't know and sort of haven't vetted.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're always happy to vet.
Mhm.
So that, and we don't have like readers knocking down our door saying, please
Mhm.
let me read. But so it's not really a problem that I've had to deal with many times. But the few times that we did take on readers, we did kind of um see how they engage with work.
Mhm. And one final question, I ask this to all editors, and you've sort of touched on this already a little bit, but what keeps you going? What keeps you motivated? Sounds like a lot of work. Clearly, there are rewards, but what keeps you doing this?
Um, I think the initial impetus, like the delusion, was was to be a part of this incredible tradition of literary magazines. I mean, you're writing this beautiful website celebrating this practice, which is really like a historical act. Historically, it's an act of um um like independence. Starting a literary magazine and running a literary magazine, it's a way of asserting one's taste, one's voice,
Mm,
one's creating a community. It's an act of resistance sometimes. It's and it's also it's also this like beautiful creative project that by which you can create something from scratch that marks marks one's our taste in time and our moments in time and our kind of journeys as writers and readers, as editors. And so every year we put out a magazine, and every year, you know, we took a pause during the pandemic, but almost every year we've put out a magazine. And every time, you know, like this kind of thing, every time it comes together and we flip through the pages, you know, for the first time when it comes back in test prints from the printer, it's like this magical moment, you know, like when you see those videos of like debut writers opening, like unboxing their novels and holding it, like every single year I have this feeling. And it's not my work necessarily, you know, in terms of the creative, the content
Mhm.
that's inside the pages, the covers, but it's it's something that we created
Mhm.
in the world. And we try, you know, we try to make it as beautiful as possible in terms of being a physical object. And also we try our best to curate the material that we think needs to be curated, um, and that we receive. And so it's this magical experience
Mhm.
of yeah, like just creating something in time. Does
Mhm.
that make sense?
It
You
makes
know, like,
absolute sense. I think it's one of the best answers I've heard as to why people start literary magazines, and also touches on why I do the work that I do. I think you're
yeah,
totally right that lit mags are sort of they're a record of your moment in time, and over time it creates this kind of historical archive of what people are thinking and what's happening and kind of what's on people's minds in
exactly.
a particular moment. Yeah.
Yeah, and so just kind of engaging with the form
Mhm.
and engaging with um writers who are writing today. Like I said, like across the spectrum of where they are, of positions in their careers, and then creating this product, this art, this piece of art, really, you know, a book as art. um you know, like like I love zines, I love, um you know, I love the I love books as art. I love art books. You know, I spend a lot of time like going to these kinds of stores and like just looking at books and thinking about books, and as the editor, you know, sometimes making decisions about design or layout, or and so it's just a really, yeah, I think it is a form of art. And these books that we produce, they're more than literature, you know, they're 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 creative art products. And so, yeah, just that, I think that just basic feeling of creating, you know, like we're creators and we want to create something beautiful in the world, and a literary magazine is something that we can create. um and then what else sustains us? I think it's inspiring to like read work
Mhm.
that's new and that encourages us to create. And um also just the community. I think having the team of editors that I work with, I think it's, even though we all work virtually, we're like, you know, we're in Vienna and Paris and Shanghai and Tokyo and Washington,
Mhm.
um, and New York. We're everywhere, and we only meet virtually, and we don't even like have that many team meetings. Um, but it is a community, and it links us. And I think as artists, we always need community, and especially as artists who live abroad,
Mhm.
you know, and many of us do live abroad or in Europe or in Asia. And it is a kind of community that we've created, if not amongst our readers physically, at least amongst ourselves, you know? So so that's nice.
Yeah, it is nice. Well, thank you so much, Julie. This was really great.
Thank you so much, Becky. Yeah, thank you for everything that you do.
Of course,
It was
thank
lovely to
you.
talk.
And thanks, guys, for coming out. I will see you soon.